All right, so this video is really just kind of a tutorial about plugging things into the breadboard. You can see that I'm on the last page of the appendix, and I'll apologize for the shoddy video techniques here because I'm going to be trying to build this and hold the camera at the same time. So this is kind of a last minute addition just to try to help you out with building this circuit. So you can see on page 12 there is a step-by-step instruction on how to build the circuit in terms of what to plug it into. These letters and numbers are columns and rows that you can see from the breadboard's perspective. So I'm telling you a specific place to plug things in. Think if you ever played the Battleship, right? It's very similar. So the other things that we need to make sure that we're keeping kind of track of to make sure everything works out nice is polarized circuit components. So there's certain things that current will only be able to flow through one direction, like an LED, and so we have to make sure that we know what the positive and negative side of an LED looks like. So let's get after it. Step one is to plug in the 9-volt battery connector. Now, I've got my circuit components down here, and at my house, I had to kind of scrounge these together. I didn't get a nice package things like most of you. So I don't have a battery connector, 9-volt battery connector, but I do have a 9-volt, and I've got a couple of wires that will be used as the connector. So what we're going to do is we're going to plug this into the power rails. So you have two power rails at the top and the bottom. So we're going to use the positive on top and the negative on bottom to kind of simulate more of what the schematic diagram looks like for this. So we are going to, I'm going to put one of my wires, let's see, I'm going to pick this long one to be plugged into my negative, and it really doesn't matter which one you plug it into as long as it's plugged into one of them, and I mean one of them along the entire row down here. So once it's plugged into that and it's hooked up to a battery source, then that means that we have a negative terminal for each one of those ports. And I'm going to plug another jumper wire in to the positive one up here. Now, again, remember that you're going to have the 9-volt battery connector, so you're going to have something that can actually snap on to the 9-volt, and I'll have to do something like this where I'll kind of hold it and get it to function that way. Okay, so next thing is to place the transistor in the proper orientation in row G18 through 20. So I have my transistor, and you'll notice that I had the transistor taped up in some tape with the 3 prongs here, and that's simply because as we'll find out, transistors are very susceptible to low current and voltage, so we want to make sure that we don't have any sort of static charge that gets built up, and it could affect the way that the transistor functions. So looking at the diagram, the wiring diagram, you'll be able to pick out, hopefully, there we go, that there is an orientation to the transistor. You can see that there's a flat side and there's a rounded side. So if we're wiring this up, we want to make sure the flat side is pointed towards the top of the diagram or the breadboard. And we're looking at G18 through 20. So G is the second row up. Again, sorry for my video. And then I will plug it into rows 18 through 20. So there we go. There is our transistor. Okay, so the next thing is the negative side of the LED goes into H18, but the positive side of the LED goes into the power rail, the positive one. Now, as I alluded to earlier, I'm going to try to bend this back. The LED is something that has to accept current a particular direction. And so if you notice, one of these LEDs legs is longer than the other. The longer leg is the positive leg. So you can flange it out a little bit, as long as you remember what side's the positive side. And the positive side is going to go up to the positive rail, and the negative side is going to go to H18. So I am going to put my H18 in and swing this around to the positive power rail. And you'll want to make sure that it gets plugged in a decent ways. So now I've got the negative side in H18. Notice that that's sharing the same row 18, right? Row 18 with one side of the transistor, and then it goes up to the positive power rail. And again, any port on the positive power rail will have a connection to the positive side of the battery now that we have this jumper wire, and your 9-volt connector is going to go there. Okay, so then we have to put the piezo buzzer. So your piezo buzzer is this guy right here, right? You got another positive and negative kind of orientation, red being positive, black being negative, and we're going to put the positive on the power rail. Got mine a little tangled up here, and again, it doesn't matter where. So positive on the power rail. These are thinner wires, so you want to make sure that you don't break them somewhere inside this, so don't bend it, don't crimp it. If you break it, then we're not going to know if it's working or not, or where the short is, because it'll be covered by the insulation. All right, and then the other one goes to J18. So lots of 18s going on. So J18, I put it up at the top. Technically, it could go into I18 as well, but this is just a connection to that side. There we go. That side of the transistor. All right. Next thing, potentiometer. Okay, so your potentiometer is this thing right here. Now, a potentiometer is something that is a variable resistor, basically, and it has like potential in the name, just because the variable resistor is typically used to vary voltage, right? Ohm's law, V equals IR, that sort of thing. Now, mine here might look a little bit different than yours, simply because you have the prongs, right, are going to be all going downward. You should flange out the prongs as you see here, right? Basically flange them all out so that they're parallel to the ground if you were to sit it down like that, and that's just going to help you plug it into the breadboard. So here we go. We have the potentiometer goes into F 7 through 9. So F is this one over here, 7 through 9, right in through here. Okay, now you notice that there was 3 prongs there, and there's a note about that in the appendix. So there you go, 3 prongs there, so it's going through 7 through 9. So we got that. Okay, then our photoresistor. So our last major circuit component that's not a wire, our photoresistor, and there's a whole thing about the photoresistor in the appendix. So we're gonna go, the photoresistor goes from H12 to the negative power rail. So the negative power rail is down here. Okay, and this is actually not a polarized component, which means it doesn't matter how you put it in there. And then we're going to go to H12, maybe. Okay. Now breadboards are typically a little weird, especially when you're trying to create a junction that's not connected to other things, and so you kind of have to do it through another row. So there you go. That's how it should look before we start adding these jumper wires. So now we're going to do a jumper wire. So I'm going to try to maintain colors that are there, but I don't have the same colors that are listed. So J20 to the negative power rail. So I'm going to go over here to 20, right, but J20. So J20, sorry, again for the video, to the negative power rail. Again, it doesn't matter where on the negative, but now I got J20, so that's the right leg of the transistor connected to that, and all the way to the negative power rail. All right, now I need one from J19, so that'd be right next door, right, J19. That's gonna go to J12. So that's gonna hop over and go over to this side right here, so J12. Okay, now, you'll remember, 12 is also the row that we used for the other part of the potentiometer, right? So that's connected to the potentiometer somehow. All right, now when you have J7 to the positive rail, okay, J7 to the positive rail, so J7, so that's connected to one side of the potentiometer to the positive power rail. All right, and the last one is J8, so the middle part of the potentiometer, to I12, another one that's 12. Okay, so I'm gonna put the phone down, get it over to I12. Awesome. All right, there we have it. Okay, there we have it. Now, if I hook it up to power, let's see what happens. 9-volt battery clip is going to be a lot easier. Oh, I heard something. So if you don't, if you hook it up and it doesn't quite do anything, try messing around with the potentiometer dial. See what happens. And sorry for the jump there. I figured out what I was doing wrong. So you got to make sure that you have your battery hooked up right? So on the side of the battery, you got negative, you got positive, right? So a negative side is the big side. So I'm gonna lay this in, and then I'm going to touch this over here. Ooh, that's annoying. All right, so I'm gonna adjust the potentiometer a little bit, and you'll find that the potentiometer can be used as kind of like a sensitivity thing. All right, so I'm still connected, but now I'm not doing anything. But now if I put a shadow over the potentiometer or over the photoresistor, oh, so there you go. And that is how it's supposed to function. So now your questions are involving what's going on with the potentiometer, or not the potentiometer, excuse me, the photoresistor, when there's light on it versus not light on it, and how that is being kind of looked at with the transistor. You may have to look back at the schematic drawing a little bit to help out with these answers, and we'll cover that back in the session. All right, I hope this helped.